All right, what is going on, everybody? I hope you're all doing well. Today we are checking out, all the way from Australia, a pedal called the Poly Ample. This is a really great sounding, very ambitious pedal in that it uses capture technology. As far as I know, I think it's capture IR. There may be some circuit modeling, but it's, as far as I understand, capture technology of up to, I believe, 56 amplifiers in this little box. Anything from like a Dr. Z Stangray, which I thought sounded killer, to like a Bruno Underground 30, PV5150, Bogner Uberschall, Diesel VH2, Friedman stuff, Fryette stuff, classic amps like a 56 Vibrolux. I thought that thing sounded killer. Really great like Marshall JMP stuff, all the way to like Saldano. So there's just a ton of amps in here. They all sound and feel really good. Latency is fine. I didn't have any problem dialing anything in. I used quite a few of them. In the performance, I leaned into the Saldano SLO 100, the Friedman BE 50 Deluxe. For the clean tones, I used the Dr. Z Stangray. I thought that sounded really cool. And I also incorporated, the Matchless, the Phoenix 35 for the 12-string pass. But yeah, I took some time to dial in quite a few of the amps. Obviously, I'm not going to go through all of these amps. In the demo, I'll just let you guys hear a few of them, and then I'll show you how this control surface works. And speaking of, the control surface, obviously not a lot of knobs there. Well, actually none. A couple switches. The way it works is they're basically like LED sliders, so you can manipulate parameters simply by sliding up or down, and that's how you choose between all the different amp categories. There's clean, crunch, destroy, classic USA, classic UK amps, and then what would be considered like Gen X amps. Like a Gen X amp would definitely be like an ADA MP1 preamp. That's very Gen X. You know, you just touch on the different parameters or use sliders to change them. So on top of the box, the parameters that you can change, there's not a ton, which actually I really dig. You don't have to go through scads of pages and what have you. So on the top, you've got 4 parameters, but there's more, there's secondary. But you have gain, volume, bass, and treb. That's pretty standard. You have a secondary set of parameters that I will show you in the demo, but simply by tapping on the preset, you get secondary parameters. And within that, the gain control actually becomes essentially like the brightness of the lights or luminance of the lights on the box. The volume control becomes a boost control or just adds more gain, which is actually foot switchable. The bass control actually becomes your mid control, which is great. And then the treble control is actually your reverb. There's one standard reverb on here. I believe it's I wrote it down. Yeah, Shepherd's Bush Empire. It's a really great sounding reverb. So you can turn that up and down within the parameters. So that's how that works. The B-side switch, the B switch, I should say, is essentially your on and off or bypass. The A switch, or the switch on the left, is your boost switch. The boost can be programmable, so you can store it on or off if you like. On the top, it looks like it's only mono in, mono out, but actually if you use a tip ring sleeve connector, obviously that would go to Y mono, you can go stereo in, stereo out. You can set it up to go mono in, stereo out. And because these are stereo captures, and I'm not used to seeing that, at least on modelers or capture boxes in this price range, you can actually split the amp. So you can have like a classic UK amp on one side and maybe a Gen X amp on the other. And I failed to mention, because I'm not a bass player, I'm a terrible bass player, you do also have bass captures in here that are really cool. You have your MIDI in and out 3.5 mini adapters, or I shouldn't say adapters, plugs. You have a USB-C input. So if you want to do firmware updates or any sort of software tweaks, you can do that via a mini USB-C drive. I don't think I've missed anything. You know what? Let's get into how this thing sounds. It is the Poly Effects Ample. Okay, let's listen to some sounds on this thing, and then we'll get into the parameters and how it dials in. Okay, so cool. I just kind of played through some amps. The cleanest was the Stingray. The Vibrolux, the 65 Vibrolux was in the Classic USA amp category. That one Crunch amp, that was the Bad Cat Hot Cat. That was in the Crunch category. And then the Friedman BE50 was the higher gain amp, and that was in the Destroy category. Those were kind of my favorite of the four amps. I mean, there's obviously a bunch in there. I thought the Uberschall was really cool. It was nice to see that amp. I've got stuff written down here. I liked the Diesel VH2 was cool. The Fryette Pitbull in the Destroy category was cool. I would say some of the amps had more gain than others. I wouldn't classify like a Friedman BE50 Deluxe as like a Destroy amp, but I get the idea. Like I said, some amps had more gain. You could definitely get plenty of gain out of the Uberschall, the Diesel, a lot of the amps you could. Uh, I really liked the Victory, the Sheriff. I thought sounded great in the Crunch category. In the Classic UK, the AC30 was cool. It was nice to see the high watt. The JMP Super Lead was great. I actually used that for the in the in that performance. I used the Soldano SL 100. I thought that was cool. In the performance, that's in the Gen X amps. I think that was 8. Yeah, I thought that was a really cool sounding amp. So I used it for one of the sounds in the rhythm pass, and I actually used it for one of the solo passes as well because it just felt really good. Overall, everything feels good. So let's just look at how you dial this thing in. I think what I'm going to do is let's go to like the crunch parameter, and this one I believe is the Swart Atomic Space Tone. Now I don't have a ton of experience with that amp. I've heard them. I've never played one in real life, but I thought just to give you guys an idea of how the control surface works, we can use this. Pretty cool sounding. I've got a bunch of verb dialed. So with these parameters, you've got gain, volume, bass, and treble. That's straight ahead. The way you move the parameters is just sliding up and down. Pretty straightforward. If you want the parameters or movements to happen in a way that's kind of more fine, you can hold down the poly logo and you'll see all these purple lights come across. That's basically moving it from coarse to fine. So if you want to do really fine movements, you can do it that way. I didn't find that it was that big a deal not having that, but if you really want to fine tune, you can use that. You can get in and out of it, hold it down, put you in the fine movement parameter. If you want out, just hit the preset again. So that's how that works. There's secondary parameters. So it's straight ahead, gain, volume, bass, treble. If you hit the preset button again, now you've got a new set of parameters. The gain becomes basically the brightness or luminescence of the pedal. I just left it wide open. The volume control is actually your boost or more gain. So like you can see on this one, I've got just a little bit dialed in. The bass control is actually now your mids, so you can dial that in and out. And then what would normally be treble, this is now reverb. The reverb is that Shepherd's Bush Empire reverb. So I've got quite a bit dialed in. I can back that down. So overall, it's really easy to dial. There are going to be some quirks. You have to kind of get used to this control surface. You can accidentally hit something else, which can be kind of a booger. Good news is, if you didn't go through like scads of parameters. It's still basically gain, volume, bass, treble, and mid. And then if you happen to use the boost or reverb, you can pretty much remember how you had things set. Obviously, if I want to store, I just hold down the preset and it stores. So that's really easy. So let's just look at this. We can turn the gain down. Right now the boost is on. I'll shut it off. I programmed it on, but I can shut it off. So with the gain all the way up, that actually sounds pretty cool. So it's obviously specific to the parameters of each amp, but that's the gain all the way up. If I want even more, then I can go into the secondary parameters and actually add some boost. So I just turned the boost or gain. I don't know that it's actually a boost. I think it just adds more gain, but I just turned that up. If I want more mids, and get some more bark out of it, less reverb. So that's how easy that is. Go back. If I want a bunch of bass, treble all the way up. And then if I get it set where I like it, just hold the parameter number and store it. Without boost. with boost. So it's cool to be able to store whether you want it to come on with boost or make it so you can add boost. But that's how easy it is to dial this in. It'd be the same, you know, I could go to, let's go to the Gen X amps and do the Saldano, which was one of my favorite ones. I used it for a solo, and I think one side of the, one side of the performance, one of the rhythm tracks, I used the SLO 100. I really dig this, this amp. So same thing with this. If I want more gain, you can see I've got the gain all the way up, but I could go into the secondary parameters and add more boost. I actually like the mids where they are. Reverb, I can shut it off. That sounds really cool. I can store that. I might as well leave it. Might as well store it. So I thought that was really simple. Now there's things you can do with this. You can actually split the amps out. Like if you use a TRS cable that Ys into two monos, you can actually split the amps out. So you can have one amp on one side and one amp on the other. For demo purposes, I just want to keep it simple and let you guys check this thing out and how easy it is to dial. In my opinion, all the amps feel really good. As I mentioned, I don't have experience with all 56 amps in real time, but just the ones I've got dialed in, and there's a good 20 of them. Everything feels good. Latency wise, it's comparable to like a Tone X, you know, most other kind of modeling deals. It seems to work great. I will say that the control surface can be a little bit quirky. You can accidentally hit the wrong button trying to do a slider. Good news is there's not like scads of parameters. So if you were dialed in on something and then all of a sudden you accidentally hit a button, like you went to store something and you accidentally hit, you know, a new preset and you actually meant to store, it's not the end of the world, because chances are you'll have a pretty good idea of how you had it dialed and be able to go back in and just fix it and then store it. So that is the Polyample. I know I haven't covered, you know, everything, all the amps, but hopefully this gives you an idea of how it sounds. I think it sounds really good, how it dials, how this interface surface works. So as always, I really appreciate you guys watching. It means a lot to me. If you're enjoying this content, please think about subscribing and hitting that like button. And yeah, once again, thank you, and I will see you on the next one.